So the role of chaplain is pretty different from the role of pastor. And I think there's some misunderstanding, not just on our campus, but in general. And so the role of a chaplain is to provide spiritual and emotional support. But also in the case of my work experience and my skill sets, I'm a certified grief counselor. So when folks are coping with loss, certainly with death, but as well as losses that accompany aging, that's probably one of the skill sets that I feel that I have that's, I would say, being underutilized. Now as people are getting to know me, I'm using it more. So when people get older, their life changes, how they understand themselves changes, their physical abilities change, they can have cognitive declines. And so one of the skill sets is that I can go and work with residents and help support them as they're coping with all these losses that accompany aging. Also, because of my background working with mental health and substance use, I'm very familiar with losses that accompany those kinds of changes too. So when people are going through just struggling with their own cognitive changes, with their own mental health diagnoses, or coping, how do I cope with this? The other thing that I'm beginning to see a lot on our campus is when we have couples on our campus that are married or live together. Sometimes one of them is starting to experience cognitive declines or changes or physical declines, and one of the partners or spouses is the caregiver, which is a tremendous responsibility. And so not just supporting the person that's declining, what about the caregiver? Who is helping to support them, and what resources do they need? And how can I help them find what's available on our campus, whether it's the clinic nurse, they need to talk to our social worker, maybe they're looking at transitioning to another level of care, maybe they need a therapist in the community. Maybe it's a spiritual issue and they haven't talked to their faith community about it. So how can I be a resource to help them as they're dealing with transitions? Because of my interest and background in thanatology, death and dying, I'm very comfortable with people as they're moving towards their death. So as they're coping with talking about their life, we call that life review. Do they want to talk about their life and what they've done and their accomplishments or their disappointments or their legacy, what they're going to leave to their children or their community? So when I was younger, when I was getting my Doctor of Ministry degree, I was studying bereavement and thanatology, and the area of my thesis was on how to support children that are grieving. So when I wrote my thesis, it was a faith-based thesis of the Christian church, how the Christian community is called to support a child if a child has the death, whether it's the death of their grandparent or death of a classmate or whatever, or the death of a friend. The book then later was the content of my thesis I put in a book. And so this book is called Death is No Stranger, Helping Children Grieve. It was written after I finished my thesis, written on the understanding that when we're trying to teach children about death, it takes more than just the parents. It takes the whole community. And so this book is looking at how we support children, helping them grieve. It goes over the developmental understanding of death, how children grieve differently at different ages, but also how we as adults, whether you're the school teacher that's working with a child or the school bus driver or a neighbor, how you may have a role in supporting children understand death and cope with death. So this was the first book I wrote a number of years ago. And then when I was doing grief counseling full-time, working as a grief support specialist, one of the things that I was dealing with was I ran an ongoing group for people coping with suicide, meaning they've lost someone that died by suicide. And so for a number of years, there was a group that continued to grow and get new people as we talked about how they lived following the death of someone they loved. So this book, Life After Suicide, Survival, Hope, and Healing, was written based on the work that I did in the Stanton area with people that were suicide survivors. They had lost people to suicide, and it's about understanding suicide, understanding how you can cope and live beyond the death of your loved one. And so this was based on stories of people and the work that I did with permission of people that shared their story. And then the last book is the one that just came out last year in 2024. This came from my 12 and a half years of work experience at Western State. So this one is not dealing with death. This one is dealing with losses that coincide with mental illness. But besides just helping folks that have lived experience with mental illness and substance use, it really also just deals with loss in general. So it explains how loss affects us, how we look at loss, how we cope with it. There's also some people that have shared their firsthand narrative of how they've lived with mental illness. But it's basically the premise of many of us are like an onion. We kind of only let people see the outside layer, and then if we're in a safe, trusted environment, we can peel the onions and look deeper.